Good morning to all. My name is Melina Pyrgos, and I'm here to moderate this panel discussion on gender budgeting. What is gender budgeting? Gender budgeting entails a review of the budgetary process with the aim of introducing gender equality in the allocation of government funds. The UN and other international organizations are urging the countries to integrate gender budgeting in the government budget. The European Union has shown a political and legal commitment to gender budgeting, to gender equality and gender mainstreaming. The Structural Reform Support Programme of the EU can support member states in mainstreaming gender in public administration, state budgeting, and financial management. The EU Parliament in two studies in 2015 and 2019 reported that not enough is being done. In line with the repeated calls by several member states in the European Parliament, the Commission committed to look at the gender impact of its activities and at how to measure expenditure related to gender equality. The outcome of the recently launched audit by the European Court of Auditors on gender mainstreaming in the EU budget to promote equality will contribute to this process. This will improve gender mainstreaming in the Commission's budget process, further increasing the contribution made by policy design and resource allocation to gender equality objectives. In the EU's external policies, gender mainstreaming is used in the budget process through the commitment of ensuring that 85% of all new programs contribute to gender equality and women's empowerment. In Cyprus, gender budgeting started gaining attention after the Fimonoi Foundation started a campaign 2 years ago and is now gaining momentum. So today we are here to discuss this very important reform. We have 3 speakers with us today, and I start with the first, Dr. Ulrike Marx, who's from Austria. She's a lecturer in accounting at the Queen Mary University, and she will talk to us about the global situation and describe how Austria, which is considered one of the most progressive countries in gender budgeting, went about it. Ulrike, the floor is yours.
Okay. I prepared a couple of slides to help us along this conversation. So thank you very much. I'm here in my capacity as an academic and as a researcher. So my background is in accounting and social studies of accounting. So I'm interested in what can accounting and accountants do to further kind of social progress and to fight social inequalities. So for you, I will summarize some of the insights from academic research on gender budgeting. I will mostly focus on the European Union because I've done work on the case of Austria. So in kind of connecting it to the topic of the forum, I chose a definition by the United Nations because research on gender budgeting shows that it is more likely to be successful if we have supranational support and commitment of that. So the United Nations state gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous and sustainable work. There has been progress over the last decades, but the world is not on track achieving gender equality. I have 2 examples here. The one is on the right-hand side. Gender equality is part of the Sustainable Development Goals. Out of those 17, gender equality is one, and the rationale is that we need gender equality for a sustainable world. At the moment, we are a little bit behind, so the United Nations state it will, if we continue like we're doing at the moment, it will take 300 years to end child marriages. It will take 286 years to close the gaps in legal protection and discrimination laws, and it will take another 140 years to achieve equal representation in leadership. So we need to get on with it. The current situation in the European Union, this is from the Gender Equality Strategy 2025. So I actually need to get a bit closer to see the numbers. So women in the European Union on average earn 16% less than men. We have only 67% of women in the European Union are employed compared to 78% of men. On average, women's pensions are 30% less than men's pension, and 75% of unpaid care work is done by women. So gender budgeting aims at addressing those issues, and the rationale here is very much linked to the topic of the forum, which is transparency, accountability, and representation. One of the main rationales is that budgets is the quantification of political goals. So if we want to achieve equality and social progress, the budget is at the heart of political commitments. It prioritizes financial resources for political goals, but we also need to understand that, of course, budgeting processes are highly institutionalized practices, often happening behind closed doors. So research on the emancipatory potential of accounting here suggests that budgeting can be a source to strive for social equality, because we could reprioritize revenues and expenses to promote social justice. We could strive for the representation of more diverse interest groups, so to get into those rooms behind the closed doors. And it is possible to make visible the impact on gender equality of budgetary policies. Gender budgeting is done in more than 18 countries around the world. The earliest example is actually Australia, and that goes back to the 1980s. So it is around for a while. In that context, it was called the women's budget. South Africa, in the context of the, the first free votes after the apartheid regime, it was on the agenda. In the UK since the 1990s. Sweden, Austria, Belgium are other examples from the European Union where work started in the 2000s. Considering time, I will not go into details, but one thing that is really important, I'm very often asked, what is gender budgeting and how do you do it? One thing to understand is that every country has their own approach, and that key features and principles are highly dependent on the local context and on the political context. So I hope you don't expect that I have a solution for Cyprus, because it's more likely that local NGOs know what is necessary, and it needs to be kind of translated with the help of NGOs and civil societies and academics to make it work in a specific context. So when we look into gender budgeting approaches, there's a summary in the literature that look at different ways of doing it. So there's not one thing that fits all. One approach that is done are policy appraisals. So for example, those are things where there are white papers or consultative policy papers where, thank you. Where, does this work? No. Oh, does it? No. Okay. So policy appraisals, where changes in policies and introduction of white papers will go through a process that then look into potential impacts on gender equality before a new law or a new kind of policy is going out. There are measures that look into beneficiary assessments. So, for example, the users of public services. If we spend money on a specific, if we spend money on healthcare, who benefits from that? In that sense, it might be quite useful to say gender budgeting is not just for women. One case we've seen, kind of looking at beneficiary assessments, is that from studies in medicine and gender inequality, we know that men don't do as many preventative, kind of checkups as women. And when we know that, there can be policies that gender budgeting can save men's life too. So it is a concern for everybody. We do have kind of public expenditure indices and analysis. So, for example, if a new policy kind of comes into action and we want to see the impact of that, there can be household surveys or kind of census where you can see after a while what is the impact of that policy through surveys. We can look into, does it make a difference if we change parental leave policies. Another very important part is tax analysis. So gender budgeting does not only look at the expenditure side of the national budget, but also how tax are raised, the impact of direct and indirect tax. We know that in lower income families, most of the household incomes goes on consumption for rent and food. So if we have an increase in VAT, for example, lower income households are much more, kind of suffering from those tax regimes than others. And it is not only about money, it is also time is understood as another resource. So how does kind of public spending make an impact on time use? And here very important is the question of unpaid work, because we know women do still 75% of unpaid work. So one thing to keep in mind is that gender budgeting in high-income countries is very often, economic growth is very often linked to gender equality. So the idea here is to get women into the workforce. So, kind of if countries strive for economic growth, they say gender equality is, for your benefit. There are high investment in education and health because of the human capital approach, kind of an active workforce that is healthy and is well educated will again, kind of increase economic growth. And it is about the participation in the workforce. Very quickly, gender budgeting in Austria is one of the kind of most famous examples because it was very rigorous. So it started in the early 2000s by civil societies and academics promoting gender budgeting. So it's a very common thing that civil society, women's associations, kind of feminist networks initiating those kind of political changes. And in Austria, it became part of the Austrian constitution and part of a budgetary law reform. So in 2009, there were kind of pilot projects. So what Austria wanted to do, because people asked me, how is it possible that something like that happens in Austria, which has a reputation for rather conservative politics? So everybody is puzzled to why there and not in Scandinavia. My reading of that is that at that time they tried to modernize the public sector in terms of, kind of what is budgeting. They wanted to introduce a kind of outcome orientation of public spending. They wanted to introduce management by objectives, so the kind of these new public management principles. And the feminist networks just say, well, if you want new public management, we want gender budgeting, because gender budgeting, gender equality is part of that outcome orientation. So in that context, it was very cleverly linked to put these discourses together. And what I learned yesterday in this forum, I think Cyprus has a chance here, because if we talk about transparency, if we talk about accountability, gender budgeting will help you to achieve that. So despite the fact that there seems to be a kind of transparency crisis in Cyprus, gender budgeting can be one of those tools that can be introduced at this point and might be quite useful. The interesting thing about Austria is then, because it's part of this management by objectives, it was completely taken over by the Ministry of Finance. So in Austria, the Ministry of Finance is doing gender budgeting. Another surprise in that. So I will go over these for kind of time measurement. So what does it mean? So it means with the kind of new idea of new public management, we do have performance contracts of public sector organizations. They need to commit to some kind of policy outcomes. One of those must be gender equality. So every institution in Austria has to report on their achievements in terms of gender equality. They have to measure it, they have to develop a performance indicator, and there is a gender equality performance report which needs to be produced. So to conclude, what is needed for a successful implementation for gender budgeting? Research shows we need political will to change, we need a supportive policy context, gender expertise in order to not reproduce gender stereotypes. External pressure from NGO and civil societies is most important. It needs to be resourced, so there needs to be a commitment on the government level to put money on it. The lessons we learned is, kind of, if you look at gender budgeting kind of approaches from within versus outside, what we can see in the Austrian case, if the Ministry of Finance supports gender budgeting, the impact is quite high. The danger of that approach is that the Ministry of Finance can again close the doors. So when it comes to participation and transparency, there is still work to be done, and the inclusion of NGOs and women's associations are crucial to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very useful presentation. And from that, I keep your comment that every country has its own approach, and the local NGOs have a very important part to play, and they're the ones who know what's best for the country. So I give the floor now to Mary Pyrgos, who's the director of the Fimonoi Foundation, to inform us about what the situation is in Cyprus.
Ulrike, and now we are able to, these things, some of these things we even knew from before, but it was very, very important. They were underlined in this meeting as well. So gender budgeting is a very complex issue, and we don't expect that we are going to implement it from one day to the other. However, it is time to start, and this is what we are trying to do here in Cyprus. by postponing it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that we're going to start in 2 years. It means if we start in 2 years, it will take us another 2 years until we are ready to start. So there is no time, we don't have time to lose, and this is why we're here today, and this is why we are pushing this reform. What is gender budgeting? Ulrike told us what it is, but I would like just to say that for us, for the platform, gender budgeting is a feminist philosophy initiated by women, by women's movement in the 80s, and it proposes a new approach for the design and the preparation of the government budget so that its resources and the resources of the country are distributed in a more effective way to everybody. Gender budgeting is taking in consideration the needs of all the citizens, independent of age, gender, and place of residence, and promotes policies that address the needs of the citizens. I don't know, have you been able to? So, why we need gender budgeting? We need gender budgeting because there are many social problems that remain unsolved for years. There is a need to support financially programs for the solution of these problems. There are limited funds available for programs of the civil society, and financial resources are spent in sectors that are considered important by a small elite. Therefore, we need to proceed to changes. How we started? The Research Foundation Fimonoi undertook a research to find out why the majority of civil society associations, especially women's associations, did not get any financial help to promote programs that would benefit the society. While we were trying to follow the money, we heard about gender budgeting. So we started the research to find out what was the situation globally, and we undertook a research to examine the situation in Cyprus. So, what did we find in relation? What we found out was that Cyprus was committed to promote this reform, and that Cyprus signed a number of conventions. So these commitments of the Cypriot government was the Beijing Declaration in 1995, a decision relevant to gender budgeting signed by the ministers in the Nairobi meeting of the Commonwealth, the Istanbul Convention, which was signed and it became effective in 2019, the Generation Equality Forum commitments of the member states, which took place in 2021 in Paris and Mexico, and the Sustainable Development Goal 5 of the Agenda 2030. So, having identified the international commitments of the government, we looked into the internal situation to see what has been done in Cyprus in relation to gender budgeting. So we found out that in 2014, there was a reform of the law for the this law for the expenditure law, and this law, they told us, is compatible with this change. So this law does not prevent us from promoting this reform. And also, an information seminar was organized at that time, so that to some civil servants to inform them about gender budgeting. But that was left there, and nothing else happened. In 2017, gender budgeting was included in a book. Was included in the plan of action of 2014 and 2017, and later in 2017 there was a small part included about gender budgeting in an information booklet that was prepared by the Commissioner of Equality. After this, nothing happened. So it was only in 2021 that we started doing something about this, this reform. As we already mentioned, the Fimonoy Foundation started a reform, a research to find out the situation. And then it looked into the statistics, it looked into laws, into regulations, and we found out that there were quite a lot of gaps in the way statistics were collected, and we were wondering, actually we mentioned this, how could a budget be prepared and planned if we don't have correct statistics? So one of the first things that we are going to look into in the near future is how to change or to fill up some fields in the questionnaires of this, that collect the data, so that we can have better statistics in the future. So we also analyzed the other findings we found, and we started lobbying the government. The government said that they were committed to do it, but later. So we said, no, we are not going to wait for you to start later. We are going to start now. So we launch a campaign to start to proceed with this reform. During this campaign, we had a meeting with the Commissioner of Equality, and we co-organized a seminar, an information seminar, at the beginning of 2023. And then at the same day, we founded a platform which was going to take over the campaign. Now, this platform has now 5 universities and more than 450 organizations that work together, that support this reform. Okay, in 2023, as we said, the Cyprus platform was formed. Then, soon after, a training seminar was undertaken by the platform so that we could inform our members and the people that work with us that what is gender budgeting, because one of the things that we found was that really nobody knew what gender budgeting was in Cyprus, and those who knew a little, they thought it was only about women, and this is, and of course this is not the case. And also, we continued the lobby, and in the last photo, we had, that was the meeting that we had after 8 months, we had a meeting with the minister to see what the situation was, and we have a big challenge to face now, because although he was not against gender budgeting, it was said, okay, we are going to do it. We are going to do it. So we need to push so that these things moves better. What is the situation today? The government assures us that they are ready to proceed with gender budgeting, but they do not have the knowledge yet. They will do it when they are ready. The government reached for experts and programs from search for experts and programs for Europe. This is very difficult because there is still no one accepted a common formula. Every day and every country follows a different pattern. The government invited an expert, but we do not know yet when he will be here in Cyprus and what he's going to know, she is going to do. And the government is trying to sign an agreement with, in order to include Cyprus in a DG reform program to get support. Now, when the agreement is signed, Cyprus will participate in this program, but we do not know when and how long this program will last and how it will help the government. When it will help the government. So there is a kind of cloudy climate in front of us. However, we are not ready to stop. In fact, we are very determined to proceed, and because the Cyprus platform believes the measures promoted by the government are very slow. The initial preparation should start immediately. We want to start integrating the gender budgeting so if we want to start the budgeting in the next years. And therefore, the Cyprus platform continues lobbying, continues research, continues to educate the members of the association, is planning to organize a European meeting in February 2024 in order to invite all the European countries who will respond to exchange experiences with us and with other European countries, so that we see what is happening in Europe, how to gain more experience, how to exchange experience. And I am very glad to say that already quite a few embassies have responded and have given us information how to contact people in their countries, and also some have offered even to help who had some experience in gender budgeting, like Sweden, have offered to help us in this reform. And at the same time, we prepare two pilot programs in order to assist the government to initiate the procedure. One pilot program will take place in the General Auditor's Office, which I would think it is very important because auditing is one of the most important offices that can support our reform. And the other is with the health sector. We believe that health sector is one of the sectors that needs a lot of help. They need more money in general because there is, from what we hear, in the future we will keep having pandemics, and then we have to have a very strong health system. So we think that health system should be one of our priorities. So we are very glad to say, so we are very glad to say that we had a first meeting with the YESI, which is the health organization, and we are discussing to hold a pilot program in the future when we are all ready. So here, actually today, we have a representative of the organization who will tell us what is happening.
Thank you very much. So the next speaker is Christina Loizou, who's a senior officer with the Health Insurance Organization, and she will be sharing with us the organization's thoughts about participating in a pilot program with the platform. Christina.
Hi, everyone. First, I would like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this discussion on gender budgeting. I feel honored to participate in this panel for such an important topic and to represent the Health Insurance Organization. HIO is a relatively new organization that faces many challenges. Its mission is the implementation of the general health system, and its vision is for every Cypriot citizen to enjoy lifelong, equal, and unhindered access to high-quality healthcare services. The GHS, as a people-centered system, is based on the principles of social solidarity, justice, and universality, both in regards to contributions and coverage. HIO as an organization is open to exploring new ideas, investigating them, and looking into solutions. We were approached by the platform in order to give them permission to initiate, when the time is right, a pilot program, because the health sector is one of the most important sectors of the economy. It was proposed that this program focuses on the pharma sector of the GHS, and we as an organization recognize the importance of the pharmaceutical sector to our system, and we welcome this proposal. We understand that gender budgeting is welcomed by the European Union, and Cyprus has, as we are informed, signed international conventions on this matter. This program, once it takes place, has the potential to help the organization improve certain areas of its budgeting process through its findings. The timing of this pilot program will have to take place when the organization is also ready in terms of resources and capacity. However, we look at this initiative positively, and we look forward to starting in the future. We're currently in initial discussions with members of the platform regarding this topic, and we're willing to learn more details on this topic through seminars and meetings. The organization sees this initiative in a positive light, and even though we cannot comment immediately, we look forward to getting involved in this. For now, we aim to focus on gaining knowledge on gender budgeting in order to have its principles in mind during our budgeting process. In concluding this speech, I would like to thank Mrs. Mary Pyrgos for including us in this initiative and express our admiration for the great commitment and drive she pursues this project with.
Christina, so I'd like to open the floor now for any questions that anyone may have. Mm-hmm. Yes.
How much have you included the director at the Ministry of Finance who is dealing with the budget?
Actually, our first meeting was the director with the Ministry of Finance. This is how it all started.
Okay.
When we went there trying to change the money, we went there and they said, why? Where does this money go? And why do we not have enough money for this? And we talked about it, and we talked about gender budgeting, and he said, we have it in mind, and we are going to do it, but later. Yeah. So when he said, then when we found out that that Cyprus was committed with conventions, we just could not stop. We just started, and here, this is where we are today. Actually, we are very surprised that we have moved very fast, because it's only a year. It's not even a year since the platform was inaugurated, and I think we have done quite a lot.
Yeah. Another point, because I work for budgeting in the 1990s myself, personally, okay. But now I'm not involved at all. But there is a circular to all the ministries about budgeting, how to promote their budget and give their proposals for the next year's budget. And there is a big circular that goes to all the ministries that they could include, the Ministry of Finance could include some clauses, some issues that could help all the ministries to promote this and put in their programs, in their proposals, issues about this gender budgeting. And personally, and I'm ashamed to admit, I have never heard about gender budgeting. I'm so glad I heard it today. And I'm going to study about it, go through all the literature now, and if possible, if we could have any of the slides, it would be much appreciated. So it would be interesting to...
I will answer your question. Actually, when we lobby, we don't go and tell them do. We just tell them exactly what to do. So actually, when we went to the minister and told him what we wanted to do, we told him, number one, send a circular, include information about gender in your circular. Number two, inform the ministries that you intend that they can go on to start educational seminars with their in their ministry. And then we added 3 or 4 other things. So another thing that we asked was that we want to be included in the commission that is actually revising the tax reform, because tax is very important for gender budgeting. Because some taxes, if they go up, they may help some people, but they may not. They may be not so helpful for other classes. So we just have to be there. We have to be there and watch and see what is happening, and also and stop the things that would not be for the benefit of all the people. So another thing also that I would like to mention is we don't want to see budget as numbers. Here, what is happening now is we receive so much, we spend so much, this is spent according to what we say, and they stop there. No, we want to go deeper, to have a deeper analysis on the issues, to see who gets the money, how the money is spent, what is the benefit for those who get it, but also what is the benefit for the society in general. These things were not being done until now. And also we know that there are some money that go somewhere, but we don't know where they go. So we are going to try and find where this money is and how to check that they go in the right direction and in a very transparent way. Because with this reform, we want to put a stop to corruption as well. So it is a very big project that we have undertaken, but we are really very glad that we have organizations like IPFE who support us very much, who are there, and they have taken up this reform very warmly, and also other associations of the platform. The universities are there to help, so we are really very optimistic that we are going to achieve this reform.
The cloud will become less tense because you like to push things.
Thank you.
We are following you.
Thank you, Despina. Any other comments? Any other Nepanayotis?
I have a comment and also a conflict of interest because I work in the HIO. Microphone, please. I have one comment, but before to begin, I have conflict of interest because I work in the HIO as a secretary of the Reimbursement Committee of the Pharmaceuticals. So I will just present my own perspective. I think we are doing quite well in the terms of gender budgeting without explicitly knowing that we do this, because all the medicine are assessed based on their value, on the quality they yield to the people. And apparently we don't divide the budget based on men and women. And I think this is good because my comment is that we are talking about budget, gender equity, and not gender equality, because we don't want to divide the budget. This goes to women and the other half goes to men. So we assess the product just based on the utility that this will bring to the people. And I think this is a very good step. And we also do this, we don't take into account whether this is for women or for men, or we don't have any prejudice in the assessment project. So I think this, our operational status aligns with your objective as well. And I think we are pretty much eager to follow or to enroll in a program to put this on a more solid basis. And I think this also applies to the expensive surgeries and the consumables that are usually implanted, that again, we don't take into account any other issue except the disease severity, epidemiology, and all this stuff. So we don't take into account gender or anything else that may alter the outcome of our assessment.
Thank you.
What we are saying is that the gender should be taken into account, either
I think, yes, this is the equity. I mean,
So,
this is the principle of equity. So we take into account the needs. I mean,
Okay.
if women need, I mean, for instance, there are certain surgeries that cost really a lot of money, and apparently they are, the majority are done by women. So it's okay. We don't say, okay, we should limit this. So
I would like to respond to
equity.
that. I would like to respond to that
Yes.
because I've done research and work and kind of case study work on gender budgeting for years, and it's a very common argument. I've heard it from the police, I heard it from the Ministry of Defense, I've heard it because the police is there for everybody. We protect the country, all men and women. But what we know from research, if it comes to police services, or especially when it comes to research on gender and pharmaceuticals, there is enough evidence in the literature that suggests that men's body, in clinical trials, are chosen as a kind of normative body. So there are statistics of why women, for example, are sometimes misdiagnosed with a heart attack because, of how medical research is done. So it is not, I do understand your argument and say, well, we are doing things for everybody and that should be all right, but I believe we know better by now, and we have enough evidence to support that. And we can, we can do better. We can do better.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question.
So clearly there has been a lot of work done by Mrs. Pyrgos' NGO in collaboration with universities, in collaboration with organizations such as IPFE, Women of Europe. However, we all know if something is not taken seriously by the government, you cannot really have a change in policy. What my question is clearly there are countries such as Austria that have best practices that Cyprus could benefit from. Has there been any effort so far for best practices and a bilateral relationship between our two countries?
Not that I'm aware of. Mary invited me a couple of months ago, and I said I do whatever I can to help. And that this could be a starting point to do that. Of course, on the European Union level, there is a lot of material available and there's a lot of help. So there is the European Institute for Gender Equality, which kind of points out a lot of, how to do gender statistics, how to do gender budgeting, what is gender mainstreaming, what are examples of gender impact appraisals, what are, there's a lot of stuff there, and it takes quite a while to make your way through it. And as we said earlier, not every approach fits for a kind of specific political context. So it's really important to have to work with NGOs on the ground, because I think you guys know what you need and where the problems in terms of gender equality are. I think the other benefit of Cyprus might be it's a small country. You're progressing fast. The coordination can be quite quick, and I wouldn't be surprised if you make very good progress in a very, very short time because of the size and the commitment.
Actually, I would like to add a little bit there. When we saw some of the officials, they told us it's okay. Let's wait and see what Europe is doing, and we can follow. So we wrote back and said, this is enough. We don't want to follow. Maybe one time in the years, we can be at the front, and maybe Europe can come. And with the help of this big conference that we are going to have in February, maybe we can start something all together, and maybe we can be a true participant, not a follower. in this reform. So we are determined to be there as equal in Europe, and not as the poor, how do we say, relative who follows, and whatever the other countries do, we just try to imitate or something like that. No, we are not going to be like that. We are going to be there, and we are going to have, with these pilot programs that we plan to do, we want to present them and talk to them about our findings, especially the one with the commission, with the auditor, which I think is a very important office to do this. How do you say this pilot program? So maybe we have something to say. Last night we were at another seminar where they were talking about what was that? Participatory budget, a different thing. So I got in touch with these people, and they said that they made the research. It's a different research, but it has some relations with what we are doing. And I said to them, what do you plan to do? And they said, we have done the research, and most importantly, most probably we're just going to put it in a drawer and leave it there. So I said to them, okay, give it to us, and we can see how we can move it forward, how we can include it, what elements of this research can be included in the research that we're doing. And they said yes. So we are not stopping.
Okay, so we've run out of time. I can give you a last remark if you would like, Dr. Marx.
No, thank you, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a brilliant forum. This topic fits so well with the topic of the forum.
Yes.
Because gender budgeting can achieve democracy, it can achieve transparency, and it can increase representation of any group who's underrepresented.
Thank you. So closing the session, we can just say that at least for Cyprus, what is the first thing to do is to increase transparency, to be able to examine the impact. I think that's the takeaway from where we are now. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ulrike. Thank you all for coming.